Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Rates and Lanes podcast. I am your host, Rico Muhammad. That handsome fellow over there with the same haircut as me, that's Chuck Snow. And our good friend, our resident expert from DAT, Mr. Dean Croak himself, is back on the podcast live with us this evening. So if you have questions, a little bit of housekeeping, just give me 1 second. 1 second. I want to make sure we get live across all platforms. But a little bit of housekeeping. If you guys would do us a huge favor, please like, share, and subscribe. It doesn't cost you a dime, but it helps us out tremendously. Helps gets us out to a bigger and broader audience. I'm always looking forward to when we have Dean on, because Dean is such a wealth of knowledge, and it's going to be interesting. It's the first time this year that we've had Dean on, and we get to kind of look back and compare some notes, and we have, and he's here with all the information and stats and statistics to kind of help verify a few things, maybe a couple of hunches I got anyway. So with that being said, without any further ado, welcome everybody. And Chuck, how are you this evening?
We're doing great. Thanks for asking. It's great to be on again, and great to have Dean on back in the saddle here with us. Looking forward to this show.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Dean, man, it's been a lot of smoke and fire going on in the industry. There has been all kind of stuff happening from major. You've had a few companies that have closed, that have shuttered and went out of business since the last time we talked. I mean, quite a few, more than a handful, I believe. Of course, the English language proficiency has picked up steam, and also along with the non-domiciled CDL drivers. One thing that I have been noticing, so kind of just jump right into it, how are we looking? Because I heard some different stats and information coming out that we are definitely losing capacity. So what are you seeing? What can you tell us as far as people shutting down their authorities, and how many people are actually opening up authority? What is our net? What are we looking like on that front?
Yeah, we lost a much higher number of carriers in December than we would normally lose. So that was something. When I looked at the number of carriers that we left in, and I can pull up the numbers here pretty quickly. When we lost, normally in December we lose carriers, right? So it wasn't unusual that we lost carriers in December.
Right.
What was unusual this December, and the numbers showed that compared to the last 5 Decembers, the December just gone was 34% higher than the average of the last 5 Decembers. So that was kind of interesting. So it told me that there was a higher number of carriers leaving. The number was about close to 8,000. So the net was, we lost more capacity, Rico, to answer your question. And there's always the seasonality. We always lose carriers in December, January, but there could be something to this. But I look at the DOT revocations, as in the carriers that leave, as one data point. The data point I look at that really tells me have we lost capacity is spot rates. And more importantly, how much spot rates dropped in the first few weeks of January.
Right.
Because that's the real tell, right? Because, we had the sugar rush in December, and everyone lost their mind and said, oh, the market's turned and we've lost all these drivers and the market's back, and I said, hold on, people. Like, it's Thanksgiving happened at the latest possible time it could. We had 3 weeks of nasty weather, and because the large truckload carriers that control 80% of the freight had ordered hardly any trucks, and they'd got rid of all the many trucks as they could, they didn't have a lot of excess capacity. So when all this retail freight started to get moved after Thanksgiving into all the warehouse markets, right? You had all this excess volume moving on all these lanes. The large contract carriers didn't want to take on all that excess surge volume on all those lanes. So it sort of went to the spot market, and spot rates went up. So it didn't necessarily mean that the market flipped. the market was just at equilibrium and excess capacity was tight. And there wasn't a lot of, I'll use the words from Shelley Simpson at JB Hunt on their earnings call last week. The market doesn't have a lot of elasticity left. Doesn't have a lot of flex when there's a surge in demand. And that's what you're seeing. Now, the real tell was, and I said this before Christmas, I said, this feels like a bit of a sugar rush. And what happens after the sugar rush of spot rates is the crash. Well, the crash happened, but here's the thing, Rico. It wasn't the normal crash that we always see in the first few weeks of January. Normally in January, dry van rates will come off about 25 to 30 cents per mile in the first 10 days. This year, it was only 5 to 7 cents.
Wow. What a difference.
And it's held.
And that's significant.
Yeah. And more so in reefer. Now, I put reefer down to the cold weather.
That's what I was going to get. You're reading my mail now.
There's two parts to the reefer story. One is it's disproportionately affected by minorities. Right. And it's more of a spot market produce play there. But it's also impacted by cold weather and dry van going to reefer with protect from freeze, right? So there's a little bit of that. But there's something to what's happened in the market. You mentioned it around aggressive enforcement against minority truckers through English language proficiency, ELP. Now, that was a bit of a yawn. That didn't have any impact because we've had a lot of minority truckers for decades. That was never going to move the needle. But non-domiciled CDL drivers, the enforcement numbers won't make a difference anyway in the enforcement numbers. The unintended consequences of both those things are, and here's why. It scared the pants off a lot of people from going anywhere near where ICE and DHS are.
Right.
That's what's happened. So we went to Seattle last week and we had a big meeting with all of our senior executives, and our general manager from India was there. And of course it's wedding season back in India. And those that don't work in tech, I can tell you that, and I've worked in technology companies for a lot of years. What happens in January is a lot of people that work in technology from India that work here in the US go back to India and work in India, work from India because it's wedding season. Right. And I asked him the question, I said, so what do you think will happen with a lot of the truckers that go back home in January? And he said, they're not coming back. And I thought it was very interesting that we'd been hearing from a lot of people here that, because I'd been theorizing that we are seeing truckers leave the industry. And I'd been wondering about whether it was structural, as in permanent, people are getting out and selling their trucks or just getting out of the industry, or are they just sitting this out and waiting for things to calm down? And I can't quite figure out, is it a little bit of both or is it more structural? And I'm thinking it's more structural because rates aren't dropping as fast as they would normally. It feels like we're losing capacity.
Yeah, I think that in the refrigerated segment, I definitely feel that it's definitely. I don't know if you remember, I started talking about I was seeing an effect in the rates back in September.
Especially in the Southeast.
I was starting to see effect in the rates on the segment back in September. The thing about it from a political standpoint, we don't like to we try to stay away from politics as much as we can here on this show. But I think that from a political standpoint, you have this administration that's only a year in, so you've got 3 more years. I think that you've got, I think you're going to get more of what's already been displayed. I think you're going to see more of that coming down the pike, especially with 3 more years to go. So I think that those that don't have their houses in order would probably be wise to not poke the bear in that sense.
Well, Rico, don't forget, I've been tracking this since September. Now, coincidentally, September was when they turned all your scale houses in Florida into immigration enforcement centers. And I started tracking our load posts in the refrigerated market since then. And you can see a definite inflection in brokers more desperate to find reefer trucks the deeper you go into Florida. And for the last few weeks, I've been saying to people that there are 4 events that we will know if there's any truth to the numbers the government's been talking about in terms of the illegal carriers out there.
Yeah, I think that 200,000 might be a little bit ambitious, but it's
But in terms of how much capacity is leaving the industry, I'm looking for 4 trigger points. And one is already happening, which is avocados coming through Nogales and McAllen ahead of Super Bowl. And those rates are already on the move. The second is Wednesday, flowers coming through starting next week into Miami. If we see a real surge, that'll tell you capacity has exited. The other one is berries coming out of Lakeland soon, like berry season. And then that, of course, that sets up the Southeast produce season right in your backyard, Rico, right? Because if the Southeast produce season starts to get a lift because capacity is tight, that leads you into March, April produce season that starts in the West. Now, connect the dots. If California, which has been in the bullseye where the majority of minority truckers come from, if capacity has really exited because of California, whatever you want to throw at them, if there is any truth to this, when that produce season starts, you know what's going to happen to reefer rates nationally.
Oh yeah.
So there's 4 events that I'm watching for, and this could be a refrigerated produce season like none other that we've seen. If there's been a structural removal of capacity, and so far the signs are there, and of course that means that demand from you and I buying produce needs to also be there to support that. But this looks like a freight market that'll be driven as much by capacity exiting as it is by demand improving, which is unusual. We haven't talked about that for years.
Yeah, the teeter-totter is really...
You know what? I think a lot of these guys that are exiting the industry, is my personal belief, I think that they're burned. They've had enough of this. They've tried it, and they see even when things are reasonable, there's not a fortune to be made. You've got, and then they're looking around, they're watching companies that are 100 years old, family companies, and there's been several that have gone bankrupt. 100-year-old companies. So they're watching that and they're going, what am I trying to build a business for? So I can lose it? I'm going to go do something else.
And Chuck, we've got, on top of that, you've got geopolitical risk that could spike diesel prices at any moment. I mean, December was fortunate for a lot of carriers in that rates spiked and diesel prices dropped. Like there was almost a 40 cents per mile lift in rates and a 40 cents per gallon drop in diesel.
Couldn't make money.
That was a real windfall for a lot of spot market carriers. But oil prices are sort of still hovering around $60 a barrel. That helps carriers at the pump, but heck, there's still some geopolitical risk that's still in the background here that we've got to watch. So I think this is one of those years where we're still talking about uncertainty on the demand front, but Rico sort of asked the right question, and that is that supply is definitely exiting the market for a number of reasons. One is we've had a 3-year freight recession and things have just got tough for a lot of people, and I think people are just said, we're out either through forced bankruptcies, closures, and what I'm seeing on the marginal end of the market, capacity was going to exit anyway in this quarter. And then there's a number of other people that have said, you know what, we haven't got our paperwork in order. We are just going to go somewhere else and do something else. So I think, and then there's this other part. You can go to CBS and have a look at the YouTube video, and we see it in our rates, and we talk to brokers who can't find the capacity they used to be able to find on the southern border. And that's got to do with enforcement of existing regulations or just immigration. You can call it harassment, but people that are American citizens that don't want to leave California for fear of being harassed. Right. So that's that capacity that's moving around piece. It's either not going to where it usually goes to, and it creates an imbalance of capacity, which drives up rates.
Right.
So you can't automatically say that because rates are up that the capacity's gone. It's just moving around. And that's, like there's always, when you say we can't find trucks, magically trucks always appear when the rates are right. So we can't always infer that, capacity will be tight when the produce season hits. I've got to be careful with, that, sort of forecast, but it looks like capacity is certainly getting tighter as this year goes on. And I think, I really respect people like Shelley Simpson at JB Hunt who look at the market and say, when we look at the market, what we're seeing is slight changes in demand are creating ripples in the market now. There's no elasticity left. And what she was saying was that the market in 2025 used to have a lot of elasticity. Right. It used to flex a lot because there was always this capacity that could scale up whenever there was a surge in demand, and it could scale down. And what that had the effect of was it always flatten out the rates. You and I, we talked about it on the show. I called it latent capacity. It was like armchair capacity. When the demand had come into the market, carriers would jump off their lounge and dive into their trucks and haul some loads, and then they'd go back home. And that was kind of what the market was like. Sorry, Rico, you want to ask something?
No, I was just following along. I was just thinking about, you talking about with all of this and with all the glut of capacity that we've had, and we've experienced this freight recession now for 3 years. We are so far behind when it comes to rates. I know that everybody talks about that, but if you really, I think I seen a posting or something. I think that they were saying that we predicted about 30 cents below inflationary as far as spot market rates keeping up with inflation and everything else. We're still about 30 cents below where if we were tracking it according to inflation where we should be.
Yeah. Well, look at guys, if you went to buy a new truck 6 years ago, let's say, as compared to buying a new truck now, look at the price difference.
Yeah, we certainly haven't kept pace with inflation. There's no question about that. Just looking at the rates, though, Rico, I looked at the 5-year average, but I took out the pandemic years, right? So I took out 21 and 22. And if I look at spot rates today, we are, dry van rates today, we are exactly 26 cents a mile or 13% higher than the 5-year average, right? So excluding the pandemic years, we're 26 cents a mile higher, 13% higher than the 5-year average. So rates right now are pretty good, but I still don't think we've caught up with where inflation was over that period of time. Yeah. So that's where carriers are still not, their margins have been eroded over the last few years, where they're still trying to play catch up in terms of their equity in their business.
And Dean, you got to forgive me. I was so excited for you to come on the show and everything. I just jumped right into it. But I want to back up a little bit. Let's kind of break down each segment currently right now, the dry vans, flatbeds, and reefer markets right now. I know we've been talking kind of from a 10,000 foot view. What are we looking like? You send out an excellent report every week. What are we looking like? What are we looking like for the different segments currently?
So if I take out fuel, right? So I always like to talk about fuel, line haul rates excluding fuel. So fuel surcharge is probably 35 cents a mile. You'd have to add that on. But line haul rates in dry van are about $1.96 a mile. That's about 18 cents a mile higher than where it was last year. That's significant. That's about 10% higher. Our top 50 lanes are sitting at about 229, right? So that depends where you're running. Our Midwest states, now our 13 key Midwest states, which kind of run from Arkansas to Pennsylvania across that Midwest region, that represents about half of our loads moved on our network. That Midwest states, they're at 237.
Wow.
Right? That's where most of the manufacturing is done across the nation, right? So it depends where you run as to what your rates are, but national average 7-day 196, top 50 lanes 229, Midwest states 237. And that's so your national 7-day is sitting about 10% higher than the last year. So
that's for dry van?
Dry van. Reefer is sitting at Reefer this week is sitting at exactly sitting at, where is it here? Reefer market conditions, reefer rates. So I'll go over here. Reefer weekly rates are sitting at 241 this week. Reefer rates are sitting at 241. Again, reefer rates are sitting at about much the same, about 12% higher than last year, about 26 cents per mile higher. They're about 15% higher than the 5-year average. So a little bit, not that different to dry van. Right. Pretty good. And flatbed is sitting, flatbed's national average is sitting at 217. It's only down a penny last week. Flatbed's sitting at about 16 cents a mile, or 8% higher, sitting about 10% higher than the 5-year average. So when you look at it across the board, rates are sitting, dry van reefer sitting in that 10 to 12% range, higher year over year. Flatbed a little bit less. So rates have held that. If I go back to October, November period, rates started to separate from last year when all this enforcement activity started. Capacity started to exit the market, and rates started to separate from 2024, and then they held that gap over 2024 in late 2025 by a margin of about 10 to 12%, and they've maintained that all the way through into 2026. So I find that interesting because for most of 2025, it looked just like 2024 and 2023. Like they were almost identical years.
Right.
And it was really only until we got into that October period that we saw a clear separation from the previous 2 years. Because I don't know if you remember, like it was boring. Like the freight market had no direction.
Yeah, it was flat.
There was nothing that we could really say that differentiated the market. And it was really only until you got into that September period and the enforcement really started to have an impact. But it wasn't through the violation numbers that the FMCSA or the DAT were talking about. It was really the voluntary behavior of carriers. It was the way they changed their behavior. But it was no different than people here in Boston, Rico, that changed their behavior when I set up camp down here in Watertown. It was no different than people that work in food services. Right. Like it was human behavior's response to the immigration crackdown. It was just human behavior. And I encourage everyone to go and watch the CBS story on YouTube about the Sikh drivers who were fearful of just leaving California. And when I saw that story come out, I went immediately to all of our rates on the backhaul lanes where I know the California carriers haul from when they run out of Texas, when they run out of California to Texas. And lo and behold, all of those rates from Texas, McAllen, Laredo, Nogales, back to Los Angeles are all running 40 to 50% higher than they were a year ago.
Nobody available because they're afraid.
Yeah, and these are citizens. Like this. So it was a change in psychology, not a change in enforcement and violation rates. So that's why you can't read the news and say, oh, violations are up or down. That's not where the story is. The story is in how people change their behavior. And I think that's why you've seen people just say, you know what, this is not worth it. I'm just not going to do this anymore. But I think that's not just trucking. I think that's how a lot of people have reacted to what's going on. And I think you're right. This is a long story. This isn't just going to stop now. This is going to go on for quite a while. And maybe that leads into the closure of a lot of training schools, CDL, the mills, the changes in how you get your CDL, how you get your DOT authority, how you get all that through the government. Maybe this is the year it actually capacity becomes tighter because it's much harder to get into the industry.
What's really going to be interesting is if the federal government actually takes over the issuance of the CDL.
Yeah.
If they take it out of the hand, because there are a lot of stories from a lot of different states that they have been auditing, and it's mind-boggling if the numbers are true and accurate of the amount of people that have just been kind of rubber stamped alone to be able to get a commercial driver's license.
Terrible. But you know, Rico, doesn't it explain what you and I and Chuck have been seeing out on the highways?
Absolutely.
Like, you know, some of the craziness that we see, and
U-turns
like,
on the Florida Turnpike, stuff like that. Yeah.
Wow.
And we were having a conversation maybe a couple of shows back, and I sent Chuck this interview with a guy. Man, I can't remember his name, but boy, he was connecting some dots on the interview that he gave with Adam Wingfield.
Yeah.
But so I'm saying that to say the thing that was very provocative that I thought, I was like, damn, he's making some really good points. Was that, remember back during the pandemic when the availability of trucks was hard to get, the prices of trucks shot up through the roof, and how all those people that bought those trucks at the top of the market, and then you turn around and the rates were not sustainable to kind of justify that purchase. And the amount of he related back to, if you think back to 98, when we kind of went through a little bit of a recession, how he was saying that, you know, there were cow pastures that were being leased out with the repoed trucks that people had. And you're not seeing, the banks are kind of being complicit, because they're not going out and repoing these trucks now because
not worth it.
So it's
you know what? I just read something before I came on. The auto industry is about to, this is going to be 2008 all over again, except on steroids.
Yeah.
With bad car loans.
Yeah.
And they've been bundled together just like they did before, but a lot worse.
Yeah. I think they will, Rico. They're definitely calling in some of those, because those truck values have sort of plunged relative to what they were financed for. I think Adam was right there.
And so I'm thinking back, you know, when the what's the company, Chuck, that the big truck seller that went out of business, that they kind of bailed out up in Canada?
Pride.
Yes. So I'm trying to connect the dots to all of this stuff.
Well, it's part of it. So that the finance industry has certainly been a participant in all of that through the other side of the pandemic. But I think the point I wanted to make is that the back end of the pandemic is sort of part of what we're seeing now as this capacity exits the market, because all of the capacity that was sort of this freewheeling capacity that's been running at extra low costs, and the tail end of this market really came into the market when we were desperate for capacity. And I think a lot of people turned a blind eye to it. And I think there's a lot of people made a lot of money out of bringing CDL drivers into the industry, and probably shouldn't have been in the industry, and it's not just, you know, it's not just minority drivers. Like I see drivers out there on the road that wouldn't know the front of a truck from the back of one. Like, they're awful drivers. And I see them out there on the road when I get in my truck and drive, and I think, dude, like, what the hell? Stop this. Like, there's crazy behavior out there on the highways. And I think there's a standard that we're all trying to shift and get the standard up. But I think what's been happening over the 5 years has been this degradation in standard of driving that's been accelerated by the lack of standards that have been allowed to fall because of the influx of no standards and from all these drivers, right? So I think it's going to take a while for this to correct itself. But I think this is a pivotal year. I really do feel that what's happened, I mean, I don't necessarily agree with the way that we've gone about this and attacking minority truckers, because I don't think a lot of the drivers are to blame. I think the system has failed. I don't blame hardworking truckers but some of them probably do need a bit of a boot in the rear end for the way they go about it. But the system has let them down. It's let us all down, because I work pretty hard to keep my CDL, and I'd like everybody else to be held to the same standards and accountability. I don't like the idea that there's others that are allowed to skate by and not have the same level of training or professionalism or care about the industry. I think that's not right. I mean, the three of us here on this, everybody should be held to the same standards, certainly that Rico has as the owner operator here that's full time in this.
100%. I'm going to say something here, guys. You know where that all starts, and this is the core. First of all, you have no restrictions, but the other thing is, as silly as it sounds, the invention of the automatic transmission. Now you can put anybody behind the wheel of a truck. I'm not joking.
Hey, I got 2 gear sticks in my truck.
It's a real truck.
I'm making up for at least 2 of us. No, seriously. But you're right. I think there's this is going to be a very interesting year. I think it'd be good to have a discussion on this show, like maybe in a few months, about where we land with this. But heck, if the rhetoric from Washington doesn't turn into something, that'll be a calamity, right? If that doesn't improve things, because there probably will never be as good an opportunity to fix this industry as what we've got right now, from top to bottom, right?
I think that Secretary Duffy, like I've said before, I think he's probably the most consequential director that we've had since my career, since I began my career in this.
Mine too.
Yeah. He has definitely set ablaze to the industry. Now I think that there are a lot of things that still need to be. But I like the direction that he's going in. I do like the direction that he's, as far as cleaning up these CDL mills, getting those things, getting those things shut down. Yeah. And I think that he's starting to get more and more support, because you look at Tennessee and the bill that they have coming out now, where if you hire, if you hire
an illegal
driver, then it's $1 million fine to the company. And I think that you have to start. There has to be some teeth involved in this enforcement. It's because you see on social media, you see all the time. I think I just seen one the other day. A guy got put out of service for English language proficiency. Got in his truck and left after he had been put out of service. Got pulled over at the weigh station right down the road, and they was like, "Wait a minute, didn't you just have an inspection a few minutes ago and was put out of service?" The guy didn't know, and apparently he was driving, didn't have a medical card, so automatically the CDL that he did have was not valid because he didn't have a medical card.
Standards. So that gets back to enforcement. So here's the problem with what the government's not doing, Rico, because we're talking about parts of the problem, right? We shouldn't be cutting federal employee numbers, right? What they should be saying is, we're going to put I'd rather hear about another 10,000 enforcement people than ICE people, right?
Well, the thing about that is this too, Dean, is that the FMCSA is probably, out of all the Department of Transportation, is probably the one with less manpower. I mean, usually the FAA gets all the, they're the darling child. They get all.
Right.
We hear the most. You're right. We do need to fix this thing right now.
Let's enforce the regulations we've got. So that's the problem. Is you can't. This is not. They can change all the regs they want and tweak all the non-domicile CDL things they want, but if you're not going to enforce this, because this is they've got tens of thousands of trucks coming at those scales every single day. There are ways around this. Like you and I, we all know carriers that never hit a scale house.
Yeah,
right? Yeah, and that's not hard. So you have to fix that part of it. It has to be a holistic approach. They can't just cherry pick the issues that fit a federal government, political narrative, which is where this started, right? Which is why I say I don't agree with the way we've gone about this. I do like where we're ending up with is, tightening up the rogue elements in our industry, including things like ELDs that allow people to run excessive hours and break the law, because there's part of this has been, the fleets that are allowed to run these driver models that come from overseas and run lower wage costs and undercut rates. But it's all part of it. So I think there's a tightening of the industry we've got to get to, but it all comes down to, how do we catch them? How do you enforce this?
Yeah, and the thing about it is they have gotten so honeycombed within the industry, and they have learned all the different weak spots.
Exactly.
And so now you have, you know, for lack of a better term, you basically have cartels, for lack of a better term, inside of the trucking industry, stealing freight,
Exactly.
running trucks,
Exactly.
running dope, running drugs, everything else, and that's how you get so many people that can afford to move, go 1,000 miles for $1 a mile or something like that.
But you heard the story about the load of lobsters got stolen here in just down the road from where I live.
No, I hadn't heard about the lobster.
$500,000 load of lobsters got stolen and came from Nova Scotia on one of my friend's trucks, came down here to just south of Boston, got loaded into a warehouse, and the broker brokered the load out. It was going to Chicago, and put it on the load board, and the truck turned up, looked identical to the fleet truck, right? Looked identical, DOT number, everything matched.
Wow.
Completely fake. Like, but the truck looked identical to the real fleet. Gone.
Well, how bad of a because I've been hearing stories about carriers, and I don't know if this is a situation where people have sold their DOT numbers and then but they're saying that there are a lot of carriers that have good history behind them that have just started being Breaking Bad all of a sudden.
Right. Breaking Bad. So Rico, I said something the other day, someone shot me down, and I said, I'm convinced there's fleets out there or trucks out there that have just got no insurance, no ELDs, and they're just running wild.
It's true.
Because I'm convinced you could do it here and not get caught. And I think there's something to it. I think there's fleets doing it. Not big.
How are they getting loaded? That's what I don't understand. How are
I'll tell you how they get loaded. It's real easy. They have a friend that's got a legitimate fleet,
right?
A&B Trucking, okay, and A&B gets the load for them from from whatever, from a warehouse or from a shipper, and guy goes in from A&B Trucking. They load them, and I guarantee. I know for a fact there are people running around with nothing, running wild. They have nothing anyways. The finance company's chasing the truck and the trailer, and they just buy fuel. They get an advance.
Yeah, there's some stuff going on out there that's inexplicable. So,
listen, if they're willing to put, Rico sent out something with some guys that got caught with $7 million worth of drugs in the truck.
Yeah, cocaine in the $7 million worth of cocaine in the sleeper.
That's more than I ever had in my loads. Jeez.
I mean, talk about high value freight. I mean,
at least mine was only marijuana. It was God.
And I'm over here close for the first time in a long time. I'm out here in Shreveport, Louisiana, not too far from the great city of West Memphis, Arkansas, where if you ever rolled through and heard the guy on the CV talking about the high-speed chicken feed he got for sale.
Yeah. Oh, man. This is going to be a crazy year. Man, this is going to be a wild year. But I tell you what, this is this like I did a show this morning and I'd said like this could be one of the wildest years we've ever seen in freight, because if you think about a new Fed chairman that comes in and the way interest rates could go, Supreme Court rules for or against tariffs.
They still haven't ruled on that.
No, what could that do to the economy? Yeah. We've now got a looming trade war that could create a real upheaval on the East Coast with Europe. Like, so, and then you think, oh, okay, so if we have lower interest rates and a new Fed chair, does that stimulate the building industry? And what does that do for the economy? So this could be one of the wildest freight markets that we've seen in the second half of this year, on top of exiting capacity. Like, this could flip really quickly, and it could go from a shipper's market to a carrier's market in a heartbeat. So I even might get my truck out of retirement if it gets that good.
Interesting times indeed. Well,
Yeah.
I don't want to belabor the point, but I am definitely cautiously optimistic.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed for
Yeah.
this year. I'm looking forward, hopefully, that the turnaround kind of has legs and that it sticks, and that hopefully we do start to clean up the industry and get some of the bad actors. We definitely got to get the bad actors
Has to be
out
this
of
year.
it. We got to bring real professionalism back.
Yeah.
And I think that this may be an opportunity just for us small guys.
Yeah.
For us to maybe go out and begin to really start trying to introduce ourselves to some shippers and potentially, because with all the fraud and everything else that's going on, us guys that's trying our best to do it right and do it the way that we know how to do it. I think this may provide a super opportunity for us to.
I think pricing power will swing back in your direction, Rico. Finally, that excess capacity will disappear. Yeah,
absolutely. So, anything with that being said, any closing remarks, Dean, Chuck, that you guys want to before we kind of put a bow on this thing and wrap it up for the evening?
I think if you've made it this far, stay the course.
Yeah,
it's like
this may be a really good year.
Yeah, it's going to be a great year. If you've made it this far, don't give up.
Yeah.
Keep on, keep it on, keep it on.
Winston Churchill said, when you're going through hell, keep going.
Keep going, keep going. As the popular logo back in the 70s, keep on trucking.
You got it.
Well, Dean, we appreciate you for taking the time to come on and join us. It's always, man, we could probably go for another hour or two with all the stuff, different things that are going on, but we don't want to wear you out. We want to make sure that you keep coming back to join us.
Anytime, guys.
Thank you so much. Really.
All right. Okay.
All right. So, Chuck, anything you want to say before we get out?
No, but if anybody needs me, just send me an email with your phone number to chucksnow280@outlook.com, and I will answer back as soon as I can. And with that, Rico, I'll let you back her in a hole for another week. Again, Dean, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Race and Lanes podcast. We want to thank you for taking the time to hang out with us. Please remember, do us a huge favor, like, share, and subscribe. Doesn't cost you a thing, but it helps us out tremendously, and we'd be grateful if you did so. And with that being said, we want you guys to continue to stay safe out there, stay profitable, keep it in between the mustard and the mayonnaise, and we'll talk at you same time, same place next week. God bless you and good night.
Catch you on the flip-flop. God bless.
Thanks again, Dean.
Thank you.